Hello folks, how are you doing? Welcome to this podcast. My name is Richard Lake. I'm what people call an ultra cyclist. Well, what is an ultra cyclist? Although there's no official definition of what an ultra cyclist is, in its simplest form, it's somebody who rides a long distance over many days across entire countries, even continents. Somebody that spends a lot of time on the bike, riding hundreds of miles every day to get from A to B. So what I'm going to be talking about in this podcast, well, specifically I'm going to be focusing on a race that I'm doing in 1 week's time. It's called the Transcontinental Race. For those of you who haven't heard of what I'm going to shorten to TCR, the race is across the European continent. Every year it starts somewhere a little bit different. In 2022, we'll be starting from Belgium in Geraardsbergen. We'll be finishing in Burgas on the eastern coast of Bulgaria. So I'm 2 and a bit weeks later. So to set the scene of this podcast, I'm actually riding the bike right now. You might hear the odd car passing, the odd hello to a fellow cyclist, and if we're going uphill, you might hear me taking a few deep breaths. So what kinds of topics of conversation will I be talking about? I'm going to be covering the training that I've been taking, brief talk of kinds of things that I'll be carrying along with me on the bike itself, talk about strategy a little bit, places that I'll be stopping to get some sleep during the race, and finishing with things that don't really fit in anywhere. So let's start with training, and let's go back a few years, tell you about myself as a rider. In 2015, going to and from work, 5 stone heavier than I am now. So it was just a little bit of a way to save a little bit of money, lose some weight. I'd be going 10 miles to and from work, and that was pretty much my cycling for maybe a year. And it's kind of the usual story that many people who will be listening to this podcast probably share the same experience, really. One thing leads to another. And for me at first it was entering my first charity ride, which I believe was 50 miles on a mountain bike around Lincolnshire. I didn't know the route, didn't really know how to use Strava properly for routing and things, no GPS. And then from there it kind of went into other sportives in the local area. So it was rides like the Ross Tiger, the Flat 100, other rides that people put on like the Arrow and the Lincoln Grand Prix, which is a fairly significant sportive in the calendar. My first entry that year must have been 2017. I chose the medium route, which was perhaps a little bit under 80 miles. Did that, finished it, thought, wow, that was tough. All those hills. As it happens, it just leads to another challenge, or at least that's always how I've done things, increasing the challenge and the difficulty, so that by the following year signed up to the full distance, which was 105 miles. My commute would be more days of the week, more into cycling at weekends, and the passion in cycling just ignited during that year. And over the course of 2018 is really when I found out about audax. For those who are familiar with what audax is, basically it's a group of people who share a love for long distance riding. They put on events throughout the UK in varying distances, and you just have to complete them in a set time. That's the kind of long short of it. So I got into those, doing those more and more. 2019 came along, Paris, Paris, which is a 1,200 kilometre distance from Paris to, you guessed it, Brest, which is another city in France, which lies on the west coast in Brittany, 600 kilometers each way. Amazing experience that. I forget how many people were riding it, somewhere less than 10,000. And that event was over 3.5 days. Knackered by the end of it. Got home, and that kind of leads me to 2019 in the autumn when I signed up for the TCR, the Transcontinental Race. Little did we all know that the coronavirus would come along and undo everything. For me, it gave me an extra 2 years of training. Still managed to ride throughout the pandemic, more or less every weekend, and in fact, right at the very start, when it was in full lockdown, I was riding centuries more or less every day in the hope that the TCR would go ahead that summer. So that kind of brings us where we are now in 2022. Over the last 2 years, I've just continued to do more audaxes, bigger challenges, and learning to sleep outdoors as well, which is kind of fundamental for ultra races. March 2021, I did an Everest attempt, which I completed on a hill in the Lincolnshire Wolds, of all places, called Thetford. 106 reps of the same hill. I also have a YouTube channel as well, and that meant I had a lot of support during my Everesting challenge. Big thanks again to everybody who showed up, helped out riding up the hill with me, supplying drinks and soup, and someone even brought a stove with them, Justin and his father. So, an Everesting, I swore I'd never do that kind of thing, but again, the expectation was to do the TCR that following summer, so set myself another challenge. Of course, again, that wasn't to be. So the last 12 months, it's just going to be more of the same. Plenty of audax rides, plenty of DIY audax rides, where I'd make up the route myself, make it hilly, make it flat, make it go up every known climb in a certain area, and generally just try and train in many different disciplines under lots of conditions as I can, lots of overnighters. So that's pretty much my journey towards the Transcontinental Race. All that is left to tell you briefly about is the race around the Netherlands that took place at the end of April this year. 8-day time limit to travel 2,000 kilometers around one of the world's most cycle-friendly nations. Ended up finishing in 6.5 days. So I've got a day of just doing nothing but sleep and recover, and see the final riders coming in on the following day. It was an amazing experience and just gave me something to look forward to in the summer. So what next? The bike. This bike, the Sonda Calibri, it's a titanium road bike that I bought from Outkit. Originally I bought this in March 2020. It came one day before the nation went to lockdown. So I was really obviously thankful that I had something to ride, which was new, ready for the race. In terms of the components, the drive system, Shimano components throughout. However, the race, I've changed quite a lot on the bike. Got some oval chain rings from Absolute Black, and I've had those on for less than a week now. I wanted to have better cadence and more ability to climb the hills. So instead of 50-34 on the front, I'm now 42-30, I believe. So I've got a larger range of gears, rather a larger range of smaller gears. And so far, I really have noticed the difference. I'll touch on cost briefly as well in this respect to the timeline. As you can imagine, I've had 2 years worth of replacing components. So the bike is no longer as new, but it's all race ready to go in a week's time. So what kind of gear setup, what sort of bikepacking things do I have on this bike? The bikepacking setup is what you'd expect to see from doing ultra races really. There's no real surprises in here. I was originally going to go for a full frame bag with a hydration bladder. Doesn't look like I'm going to be taking that approach, but today it's working out quite well, and I do manage to have everything with me I need. When we look at the cockpit, the forward area of the bike, as I'm looking down right now, pair of tri-bars hanging off there. We've got a Restrap Aero bag, which has got my sleep system in it, a bell. Next to the bell, we've got the Garmin. It's a Garmin 530, mobile phone below, on a quad lock. Hiding underneath the mobile phone, we've got a pedal cell, which is a dynamo for charging everything on the bike. A few things hiding underneath the phone as well. A pair of lights for night time. Bar tape wise, we've got some lizard skin ×2, doubled up on layers, just to make it extra comfy. And there was enough bar tape to cover the ends of the tri-bars as well. Moving to the top tube area, I've got a Apidura Race 2 litre top tube bag. It's going to hold food in there, and a RAV Power power bank to charge all the devices up. Underneath there, as you would expect, a couple of water bottles, and also a pump attached to the side with a Velcro strap. In the third bottle position, loads of tools and things, and behind me I've got a saddle bag from Alpkit. It's called the Koala, 17 litre capacity, and that's got mostly my clothes in there and a bit of food. And below the saddlebag on the chainstay is a couple of rear lights as well. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'll carry with me on the bike. So this ride that I'm on today, it's a century ride, a shakedown ride between Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire, and in the middle, South Yorkshire. Just going through the picturesque town of Bawtry at the moment. So the bike that I'm riding, the gear I'm carrying today, will pretty much be identical what I'll be using for the Transcontinental Race. The category I didn't mention to talk about is clothing. And as it's to be expected, it's summertime. It's going to be all lightweight clothes, mesh base layers, mesh jerseys, lightweight clothing, bibs with lots of pockets, rain jacket as well, just in case there's a heavy shower. Sleeping overnight, arm warmers, leg warmers. Hopefully I overestimated what it's going to be like sleeping overnight in the continent, and just hopefully have a great night's sleep. Let's talk about strategy briefly. Okay, the race is a week away. Got my route done. It's a little bit hillier, a little bit longer than I expected, but alas, after weeks spent on it, many hours putting the route together, I finally set it into stone and copied it all into my backup cycling computer, the Wahoo Element Roam. Just need to load that into my Garmin now over the next few days, and it's all good. Essentially though, in short, climbing wise, according to Rival GPS, there's nearly as much climbing as 6 Everesting challenges. I've also tried out Komoot, and quite surprisingly there's 9,000 metres less, which is good, isn't it? So you don't know what to believe. Distance wise, that's unchanged between the two. So that's the route. What about sleeping in things? So the idea, and it'd be on the fly really, I've got a sleep system, sleeping out in the open, typical bivvy setup, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, bivvy bag, a few clothes to wear on top to keep me warm. I'll be pairing up with staying in B&Bs and hotels whenever I feel like it, I guess, whenever I need to charge myself or my equipment or have a shower. What about distance covered per day for 24 hours? Well, think more of what distance can I cover in 18 to 20 hours. So what I'll be aiming for on the more flatter stages, the first half is 180 miles a day. Of course, when I go across the Alps, expect that to be much less, or longer days without sleep, essentially. Probably tell I'm actually going uphill as we speak. Whew. Only a short one. On the 16th day, there's a finishers party. This idea, the objective for me, is to try and finish maybe a couple of days earlier, or at least on time. So like most of us, I've got a full-time job to hold down. Need to be back at work on the Monday. I've already warned work that might not happen. I guess in the same topic as strategy is how am I getting back from Bulgaria? The idea really is to put the bike in a box and take a flight back to Brussels, where I would have parked my car before the race started. Sounds simple, in practice it's going to be quite a challenge. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was food and drink. So I already mentioned the question mark over the full frame bag. The issue I have with the full frame bag is the hydration bladder inside. You cannot see how much water you've got left without just getting off the bike or peering inside while you're still moving. You sort of get a bit awkward. So instead, I've got 2 water bottles in the frame. I'm also taking a third larger water bottle, which in the first few days will be crammed full of cereal bars. I'm thinking when I get to Eastern Europe, I have to carry more water on the move. In terms of the things what I'm going to be eating, already mentioned cereal bars. Already got some blocks, I think they're Cliff blocks, is that right? In terms of what I'm going to call normal foods, what else I'm going to be eating? Essentially, normal foods. So pastas, maybe a bit of a pizza, sandwiches, Snickers bars, paninis, soft fruits, maybe the occasional ice cream or cornetto. There'll be a few forecourt picnics, I'm sure. Essentially, in short, it's about eating lots of calorific foods, lots of carbs. Over that 2 weeks, it's 4,000 kilometers, so you need to be eating a lot, fueling up every day. Even when you feel like you can't eat anything, you need to eat. You gotta keep yourself fueled up, keep moving. And keeping moving is a key strategy, really. So hopefully that's added a little bit of meat to the bones of who I am and the training I've been putting into the Transcontinental Race. In terms of how I got into cycling, the kind of rider that I am. So you've been listening to myself, Richard Lake, first in a series of new podcasts. This one, my preparation for the Transcontinental Race. In the next episode, I'll be broadcasting live from the Transcontinental Race, somewhere in Europe. I'll briefly mention the podcast setup now. Phone in the quad lock, lapel mic, an app that simply allows me to record the audio and put it against a thumbnail. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see the thumbnail. The format of that podcast will be raw. There'll be no editing going on. There'll be a few pauses in there, no doubt. I will, of course, be taking part under race conditions. I'm one of those riders who is there for the adventure, and ultimately my overall goal is to reach the end, however long it might take me. So that's it from me. If you've got any comments, don't forget to put them down below. I do read all the comments, every single one of them, and I do try to reply as much as I possibly can. It's always good to hear from you guys. And of course, don't forget you can watch my progress and all the other riders as they take part in the Transcontinental Race. I'll leave a link down in the description below. So folks, I'll see you again soon in the next one. Take care, bye bye. So why did I choose to finish this podcast going up a hill?